Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder, it's time to have a look at another update 1.91 devblog. This is for the Westland Scout and also the Westland Wasp. This is going to be the third and fourth helicopter that we're going to have a look at in the British tree. And it's kind of nice to know that we're getting a full British helicopter tree. After what happened with the Japanese last update, or the updates ago, where we got the AH-1S, I was kind of worried that we would get more of a limited tech tree, but it seems like at least we are all on board with the idea of a full British tech tree for helicopters. Even though that only means, you know, maybe 6 or 7 vehicles, it is much better than just having 1 or 2, which tries to fill a gap instead of trying to create a progression system. So what is the Westland Scout and also the Westland Wasp? Well, the Wasp is a naval version of the Scout, so therefore they're very similar in how they actually portray themselves, and generally the only real difference between them is that the Wasp is a little bit heavier because of the fact that it has to be, let's say, navalized for use. You know, they have to add the undercarriage wheels and also some other equipment to make it that slightly bit heavier. So that's basically the main difference in game, at least, that you're going to feel. But these are also going to be helicopters which are going to be at the start of the British tech trees. So if you decide to start researching the British helicopters and you don't get the premium, the G-Lynx, these are going to be the first helicopters that you're going to play. And they're very much similar to the setup of the Alouette from the German tech tree, where they have access to some machine guns and also have access to SS.11s. So the missiles that are available on a lot of machines nowadays. So the RB-52, which is of course the STRV in the British tree, the Premium Centurion. Then of course you have the AMX-13 SS-11. So if you've ever used these ATGMs, especially on something like the Alouette, you'll know that they pack a decent punch, but they're incredibly slow, and they do take a while to get to a target. So that is definitely something to work on. Now, what is also interesting in this devblog is they show no pictures of the Westland Wasp, and they only show pictures of the Westland Scout, which is what you can see here. Now, the main difference between the two sets of vehicles, as I said, is the undercarriage, where this one has, of course, the skids, and the Wasp has the wheels. And now this is generally the case when it comes to British vehicles, where the naval variant has wheels and the non-naval variant has skids. So this is what the naval variant looks like. This is the HMS Eskimo, as you can see, and the Westland Wasp is a hell of a lot uglier than its brother because of this absolutely hideous undercarriage that you can see. So this is what it looks from the side. It's just not very nice, is it? So this will be coming hopefully at the same BR as the Westland Scout when it comes into the game. So if these vehicles are the first that are going to come into the British tech tree, it definitely shows that we have some form of pattern here, because the Scout, the Wasp, and also the Lynx and the G-Lynx are incredibly light aircraft, not a ton of armor on them, but should be quite maneuverable. You should be able to throw them about the air. It's very much reminding me of the German tech tree right now, apart from the fact that the Lynxes have a lot more armament than some of the higher tier BOs that you have for the Germans in their helicopters. So if we just generally have a look at the tree, it looks promising, at least in my opinion. One of the issues with helicopters, even though it's nice to get more parity in the form of another helicopter tree, and I hope by at least the year's end or maybe into next year, we have parity in the fact that every nation has a helicopter tree, we do have to think about the fact that these helicopters need to be at least comparable in certain ways, whether it be firepower, whether it be maneuverability, whether it be their air-to-air presence. There has to be something which they are good at compared to everything else. And that was the problem when the German tree came out. The German tree, if you looked pound for pound at every single vehicle in it, apart from the Mi-24, which of course was a copy of a vehicle out of the Soviet tree, they were not pound for pound anywhere near their rivals or their contemporaries in the form of the American or the Soviet tech tree. Then, if you had a look at the French also struggled with that comparability. So, hopefully, with Britain coming along, we can see that with the Lynx and with the Westland Scout and Wasp, there is some comparability, at least with the German tech tree, where the Scout and Wasp is looking very similar to the Alouette, and then with the Lynxes, their firepower, at least, with the fact that they can carry air-to-air missiles in the form of the Stingers, and also the ATGMs, there's a lot more comparability there than there is, with the top tiers of the American and the Soviet tech trees. So I'm looking forward to this British tech tree just for that reason. It seems to be varied. There's a lot of interesting stuff to it. The premium is obviously quite strong. And also, as a lot of people pointed out, rank 6, which is something that should never be overlooked when it comes to these ideas, because it normally means that we're either going to get an expansion of these helicopter trees, meaning that we're going to get rank 7 helicopters, or they're going to spread the trees out. So one of the two, which is not, whatever happens is a good thing either way. So just to show that the major difference between the Wasp and the Scout is that the Wasp, the HAS Mark 1, is able to reach a higher top speed of 131 miles per hour or 211 miles per hour, compared to the Wasp's 120 miles per hour or 193 miles per hour. So the Scout is faster than the Wasp because it's about 200 pounds lighter. You can also see that the engine itself is incredibly exposed in this aircraft. This is going to get killed by machine guns a lot, so the best way to play this is very much get close to the battlefield, find somewhere to hide, whether it's in low ground or high ground, maybe find a hill to sit behind, pop up, fire the SS.11, and then go back down again. Otherwise, you're going to have a pretty torrid time. Since this thing has access to ATGMs, the fact is it will probably be around 9.0, because every machine that has ATGMs, when it comes to helicopters, has to be 9.0 for some reason. My guess is just so it has stuff which is designed to kill it. But it is unfortunate since the SS.11s on this machine are not that strong. And also because they're just so slow through the air. You generally get annihilated by the majority of radar-guided AA in these helicopters, and the reason why I can say that is because, well, we have a direct comparison in the form of the Alouette. So, this vehicle is going to be incredibly similar to it in the general playstyle. So the fact is, it's nice to see that we're getting two vehicles at the start of the British helicopter tech tree, which should be of comparable BR, around the 9.0 area. It is kind of sad that they're going to be very similar to each other, but hopefully they're folded, or hopefully they do not create a situation where you have to research both of them before moving on to the next stage, because it's not nice going through two vehicles which are exactly similar to each other, especially when they cost as much as the research of helicopters. If you have to go through multiple 76 Shermans, it's not too much of an issue, because first of all, you're creating a lineup around them, so you can run 3 at a time, and that can be feasible. And then when it comes to helicopters, you normally don't take more than 1, maybe 2 at best. So if you set yourself up where you're researching the 76 Shermans, first of all, it's not going to take you as much time, and you're going to be able to use those 76 Shermans with each other very well. Whereas with the helicopter, especially in ground, it's going to be one of those situations where you can't use it incredibly well if you have multiple ones, and therefore your efficiency is going to go down if you have that style of vehicle. Another thing that kind of worries me about this as well, so it says it has 2 rifle caliber machine guns and up to 4 SS.11 ATGMs. So this isn't the only loadouts that this machine gets. You can see the machine guns actually sat on the skids. So if we go up to this picture here, it's probably the best picture for it. So you can see that here are the machine guns right here. and then you've got the SS.11s behind it, and also this wonderful bulge right here. I'm actually really looking forward to the cockpit on this as well. That's going to be something that's going to be lovely. But when I had a look at the video, because of course they do a video, for some reason they're putting the video at the bottom nowadays. Not exactly sure why. I always thought it was better at the top, kind of like an announcement to, hey, look at the video before anything else. Maybe it's because it's starting to add in information, which is, you know, one of those things which you want to try and keep to the bottom so people read the rest of the information. That might be why. But if you have a look at the two things that it says, so very light, yes, we know it's incredibly light, so we know it's incredibly swiggity-swooty when it comes to running around the place, and also it says researchable ATGM. So this is where it changes from being like the Alouette. The Alouette gets its ATGMs straight away. Which is why when you find a lot of them in ground, you know, for the German team, it's because of the fact that it's one of the only vehicles which is up on the chopping block that you can, you know, use straight away that has access to ATGMs. So it's technically one of the easiest vehicles to get into helicopters with because you have the guided munition. Now, this vehicle isn't going to have that, at least from stock value. So you're going to have to struggle with some other loadout before you get ATGMs. And we know that historically, at least in War Thunder, the ATGMs make such a massive difference to helicopters, especially in ground realistic, because of the fact that they are your main killing power. The only helicopter which has ever been able to at least make more of an impact without ATGMs is something like an AH-1G, and that's because it's at an 8.0 BR, and you can spawn it at the start of the match. If you're very skilled with it, you're able to set it up so you can look at a corner, wait for people to move through the corner, and rat-a-tat-a-tat them with a bunch of the rockets. So there is a way to be very useful without ATGMs. But you have to be at a low BR, which this thing isn't going to be. We know that Gaijin in the past has never used a system which changes BR depending on what modifications you have. And I think as we go more and more into the future, modern day vehicles for War Thunder, I think it's more and more necessary. When I look at the top tier of nations, whether it be ground, air, or naval, what I see in ground is very much expanded munitions, meaning that a vehicle which is fully upgraded is incredibly different to one which is stock. Plus, not just that, but also the speed difference is a large thing at top tier. So I definitely think there should be a difference in BR from a stock vehicle and a fully upgraded one. Then, of course, you have the top of aircraft, which is absolutely insane when it comes to these ideas. Looking at helicopters first, having access to ATGMs and not having access to ATGMs, massive difference. On top of this, the speed upgrades and survivability upgrades make a massive difference as well, but mainly the armament ones are the ones to look for. Then you look at airplanes. The fact that you don't get air-to-air missile stock on the majority of vehicles at top tier, plus the amount of speed that you lose, since we are increasing the amount of speed that everything can go by, therefore the range from stock to spaded of these speeds is getting larger, shows why, at least for me, and why a lot of other players don't want to play top tier aircraft, because of the disparity distance of a stock vehicle and a spaded vehicle. And as an individual who doesn't spend GE on any form of research in the game, when it comes to researching vehicles or when it comes to researching modifications, it's incredibly annoying to be able to just get annihilated for 50 to 100 games just to get on a level where my machine is comparable to the person who's annihilating me because they use GE or because they've played the game mode a hell of a lot longer than me, and they're not beating me through skill or experience, which would be completely fine. They're beating me through the fact that they have access to weaponry and characteristics which I don't. And when it comes to naval, obviously parts and FPE is something that is always brought up, and the fact that certain ammunitions, once again, are very much useful against other machines which you don't have unlocked straight away. So there's all of these things to think about when it comes to differences in BR, because let's say the Westland Scout and Westland Wasp came out, and they do come with researchable modification ATGMs, right? So they're going to be at 9.0. What if we had a situation where if you didn't have them equipped, they would be at 8.0? So they would be more comparable to the H1G. You'd be fast, you'd be running around the place, you could have a bunch of rockets, it could be incredibly fun to try and do. And then once you equip the SS11s, you go up in BR to 9.0. Everything is a lot easier to do in the helicopter because you have access to ATGMs, but also you have more of a threat from the ground because you're at the higher BR. And I hope some idea like this is considered and at least trialed in parts of the games, because otherwise, with helicopters like the Scout and the Wasp, they're going to have horrid times because of the fact that nobody's going to want to research them. It doesn't matter if you put the Apache at the top of the British tree. If you have a vehicle like this, which is the stock vehicle for it, or the reserve vehicle technically for it, because what people are just going to do is buy the G-Links. And, you know, from a business point of view, that's great, because you make more money. But from the general player's point of view, it's not, because it means that everyone's just going to skip these vehicles and move on to the other ones, which to me is not what you want. What you want is to at least have people experience every part of the game which is possible, instead of them not being able to experience this one because of the grind which is going to ensue from it. Another thing as well, when it comes to these vehicles, is the fact that one of the things that is really talked about a lot when it comes to all these Scout helicopters which have aggressive tendencies, normally in the form of ATGMs, there is this idea that you can sneak up on enemies with them in-game. This is just untrue. You can't do this because of how loud the damn things are. It's very hard for a helicopter to sneak up on anything on the battlefield just because of the amount of noise that it produces wherever it is going. It's impossible, I would actually say, to not realize that there's a helicopter near you because it's just so loud. So what people do is they hear the helicopter from a specific direction, they look whichever way it's coming from, they shoot it with machine guns, they shoot it with their main gun, and, you know, the helicopter dies. So unless there is a massive change in the sound engine, which we know is coming at some point, you know, it's not really going to help helicopters, because this sneaky ability with them is only going to take you so far, and it's generally about 10 to 20 kilometers away from the battlefield, because once you go anywhere near that battlefield, whacker, whacker, whacker starts happening, and you can hear everything around you. But anyway, I'm happy to see some more Westland vehicles be represented in the British tree. I'm just wondering what is going to be the crown jewel. So we've seen the starter vehicles in the form of the Scout and the Wasp. We've seen what I see as the mid-tier vehicle in the form of the Lynx and also the premium G-Links. What's going to be that crown jewel? I hope we see it soon, and I hope it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, and Elove Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.